Hey there. Today I'm going to talk about a book that gives strategy lessons for both businesses and personal lives. So this book is called How Will You Measure Your Life by Professor Clayton Christensen. Professor Christensen, he recently passed away. He was a professor at Harvard Business School. He was a foremost expert on innovation, and these days we talk a lot about disruptions. He was the one who coined and popularized the concept of disruptive innovation. Now, the way Professor Christensen has structured this book is that he has taken a business concept of theory, and he has first given a business example of it, and then he has taken the same concept and elaborated how it works in a personal life context. So I'm just going to dive into the book. I picked three of my most favorite concepts or theories from the book, and I hope you will find them interesting. The first one is maintaining a balance between deliberate strategy and emergent strategy. So here's the business story. Back in 1960s, Honda Motors was trying to enter the US motorcycle market. Now back then, Harley Davidson and Triumph were the major players in the motorcycle market, and they sold big touring bikes. Honda's strategy was to make these big bikes and sell at lower prices, because Honda would be manufacturing them back in Japan, where you had lower labor costs and they could compete on cost. But this deliberate strategy of Honda to sell big bikes at a lower cost failed for two reasons. The first problem was that the typical classic motorcycle customer viewed Honda's motorcycle as a poor man's vehicle. The second problem was an issue of performance. The motorcycles started leaking oil when they were taken for long rides at high speeds. Now Honda did not have the means to repair these malfunctions in USA. They had to be taken to Japan and then brought back to US. So this bled a lot of cash from Honda USA. Now, even as this was going on, Honda also had another line of bikes which they sold in Japan. They were called Super Cubs. They were sleek bikes. They were used in urban congested areas, and you get an easy ride on them in the urban areas. But USA did not have that kind of a motorcycle usage, and it was not the intention of Honda to sell those sleek motorbikes in USA. Frankly, they did not see a market for those kind of bikes in USA. But some of Honda's employees in USA were using these Super Cubs to drive around the city on the weekends. And surprisingly, this generated some interest. A distributor came up to Honda and asked if he could distribute these Super Cubs. Now, this got Honda to think. This was not their plan. Their plan was to sell big bikes in USA, and they were not really sure if these Super Cubs will had a market in USA. Since the strategy of selling big bikes did not work out, Honda saw no harm in trying to sell these Super Cubs. And then when they saw Super Cubs were a hit, they started focusing more on them. Now, two things happened. One was they created a new category of motorcycle customers who were interested in these dirt bikes or Super Cubs kind of motorcycles. And two, the Super Cubs were not sold through the traditional motorcycle dealers. Rather, they were sold through sports and power equipment shops. So here, the deliberate strategy of selling big bikes failed, but the emergent strategy of selling Super Cubs succeeded. So we call the strategy of selling Super Cubs as emergent because it was not pre-planned. It came out of unanticipated opportunities. Now that's the big business example. Christensen takes his own career journey to illustrate this concept in the context of personal life. So Christensen wanted to be an editor at Wall Street Journal. That was his dream career. So when he was doing his MBA at Harvard Business School, he applied for an intern position at Wall Street Journal. He never heard back. And then he went on to do an internship at a consulting firm. and then took on a full-time job with the same consulting firm. And then later, when a friend wanted to start a firm on his own, Christensen joined that and went on to become an entrepreneur come manager of the firm. All this while, he was still not satisfied with what he was doing. He was still thinking about the Wall Street Journal job. And a time comes when Christensen had to move out of the venture they had founded. And during that time, when he's in talks with some of his old professors back at Harvard Business School, he starts thinking about maybe he has a penchant for academia. So he enrolls in the PhD program at Harvard Business School and joins the faculty there. He finds purpose and meaning in his academic work, and he goes on to become one of the most renowned business scholars in the world. So that's the concept in application in the personal life context of it. The point is that Christensen's deliberate strategy of becoming a Wall Street Journal editor did not work out. So he kept taking up opportunities that came his way, and eventually, when he went to academia, he found something that he really liked. So that was his emergent strategy, to keep taking up the unanticipated opportunities and capitalize on it. So the lesson here is that both in business and personal life, you have to strike a balance between both deliberate strategy and emergent strategy. The second one is the jobs to be done approach. Professor Christensen, along with some of his friends, is consulting for a large fast food chain. They have a milkshake problem. No matter what they do, they are unable to increase their milkshake sales. The fast food chain tried everything. They went back to their customers and asked them how would they like their milkshake. Would they want it to be nuttier? Would they want it to be chocolatier? Would they want it to be thicker? And then they went back to the kitchen and made these improvements, but again, there were no improvement in sales. And at this time, one of the team members in the in the professor's consulting group suggested that they might approach this problem with a different perspective. He suggested putting this question: what job did the customers hire the milkshake for? Now, we are not looking at the job of hunger. We are, of course, looking at an insight much more deeper. So, with this question in mind, they observe the buying behavior of the customers. First, they notice that half the milkshakes were sold in the morning. Second, most of the customers who bought the milkshakes had come alone. And third, almost everyone who bought the milkshake took it away in a car, meaning that no one really sat back in the restaurant and had the milkshake. Now, they were getting some answers, and with this, they went to the customers to really understand the exact job for which the milkshake was being hired. So they asked the customers to think about the situation wherein they had the same job to be done, but they did not hire a milkshake and they hired something else to get the same job done. The customers said that they basically had a long commute to work and they wanted to stave off hunger and wanted something that could keep them away from boredom. So they tried bananas, which were over too quickly. They also tried donuts, which were too sticky to handle while you were driving. And they also tried Snicker bars, but having Snicker bars for breakfast always came with a dose of guilt. So a lot of them said that milkshakes did a good job. They were easy to handle when you're driving, they lasted longer, and they filled you up. So this is the job for which the milkshake was hired for. To prevent hunger and boredom on a long commute to work. So with this insight, the fast food chain can make the milkshake thicker, probably add the occasional piece of fruit, and give them thinner straws so that it lasts longer. Additionally, they could think about bringing the milkshake counter to the front and adding an option of swiping a prepaid card so that the turnaround time is faster as the customers might be rushing to work. So this is the business example. Christensen narrates a story about his friend Scott to elaborate the jobs approach in the context of personal relationships. So Scott has 3 kids and they are all less than 5 years old. One night he returns from a long day at work and notices his wife Barbara being visibly upset. The dinner is not ready yet, so Scott goes into the kitchen and whips up a dinner for the entire family. Scott thinks that this would please his wife, but instead his wife only gets even upset. After dinner, when they talk about it, Scott finally understands the real reason behind Barbara's low mood. Now, she had been looking after 3 little kids for an entire day. That drained her. What she was craving for was a real conversation with an adult and some connection. What she needed from Scott was some conversation. That was the job which Barbara most needed Scott to do for her, which unfortunately Scott did not understand until then. Now, in personal relationships, it would help to understand what job that the other might most need us to do for them. This would reduce a lot of misplaced effort. Now, the third lesson is disrupt yourself or someone else will disrupt you. Here, the story is that of Blockbuster, a very successful DVD rental business back in the 1990s. They had physical outlets and customers would drop in and pick the DVDs they liked. And then Netflix came along. They had a different model. They had an online portal in which customers could pick the DVDs they want to rent and place an order. Netflix would then deliver those DVDs to the customers' homes and then would pick them after they have done with the DVDs. Now, this was a more hassle-free model. The pain points for customers were much reduced, and this was starting to have an impact on Blockbuster's business, although it was very small in the beginning. Now, Blockbuster was aware of Netflix's online rental approach, and it considered if it had to change its existing model, but ultimately it decided against it for 2-3 reasons. The first one is that the online retail space was very small and it was a niche market, which it was at that point of time. And second, the margins were thinner. And third, more importantly, Blockbuster already had its physical distribution stores around the country. And shifting to a newer model would make those assets literally useless. It would be essentially disrupting themselves. And so they persisted with their old strategy even in a fast evolving online world. And cut to today, Netflix has disrupted itself multiple times over subsequently and is one of the leading video streaming service providers in the world today. On the other hand, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy in the late 2000s. Their unwillingness to disrupt themselves ultimately put them out of business. The lesson here is that if you don't disrupt yourself, someone else is going to disrupt you. Christensen has not elaborated on a personal context for the specific theory, but then it's not really hard to draw some parallels. We all understand the need to build new skills, build new habits, rediscover ourselves constantly. So it is basically disrupting our habits, disrupting our skills, building new skills. One who disrupts himself will expand his potential and live a more fuller life. So disrupt yourself or else someone else will disrupt you. So those were the 3 of my most favorite concepts from the book. I hope you found at least some of it interesting. If you did find it interesting, I suggest you to check out the book. It has many more interesting examples and stories. You could also check out the Harvard Business Review article by Professor Christensen. It is basically a condensed version of the key ideas in the book. I am linking it up in the description box below. I am also linking to a couple of podcasts which discuss these ideas and also other work of Professor Christensen. Thank you and goodbye.